every person that we pass by on the street, every individual that we interact with each day, and every person that we'll connect with throughout our lives has within them a fountain of wisdom that we, at any time, can tap into throughout our lives to help us to navigate some of the challenges and the struggles that we face, to help us achieve our dreams, and to help us find greater fulfillment in this life. Today I'd like to introduce you to Kaija Hill. Kaija is someone that I met on Facebook while I was reaching out trying to find some stories that I could share with this community. And I was deeply inspired by her story. Imagine if you were given a terminal diagnosis at the age of 17 and had to deal with that. How would you do that? Well, today in this interview, I talked to Kaija about that, about how she navigated that. And I hope that you will find in her story and wisdom the inspiration and the insights that maybe you need at this time in your life. Also, I'd invite you, if you feel inspired by the stories that you hear, the wisdom that Kaija has to share this with others out there. Maybe you know someone who's going through something similar, or maybe you know someone who just needs a boost to their day. All right, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Kaija.
When I was 17, my life had been fairly normal. I had been diagnosed with diabetes as a child, but that's something that a lot of people get, and it didn't really stop anything with life. But one day I just had a really bad stomach ache, and it was making blood sugars go really high. So my parents took me to emergency just to get it checked out. And after doing some tests, they discovered that I had a condition called chronic acute pancreatitis, which by itself is normal, except for the fact that only people who've been drinking for 30 years usually get it. So I was kind of an enigma. I had a rare genetic that made it so that medicines, and especially pain medicines, have absolutely no effect on me. So they couldn't treat me like they would to try to fix the problem. From that day on, my life kind of went on hold. The specialists would do tests, and they started giving me things like, well, since we can't get this in control, there's a good chance you're probably not going to live much longer than 3 years. And then people who we have seen with it usually die before 10. No one has ever made it past 10 years. This meant that I couldn't really plan much of a future. And it made things even more difficult when complications started to set in, being in pain all the time, and I started to lose my ability to walk. I started to go blind. My nerves started to burn out. Were moments I'd be numb, and there were moments where I felt everything to such extreme that it wasn't able to function anymore. I couldn't hold a job. I couldn't go to school. I was a young person in my 20s living in my parents' basement. And those who did want to still talk to me and communicate to me over letters or social media, I found myself slowly starting to turn jealous. I would see them smiling with their wedding photos, their baby photos, their trips to Europe, their going to college and accomplishments, their new cars, and all of these things that I had once so desperately wanted, that I found one day I just couldn't take it anymore. I stopped answering my phone. I didn't leave my parents' basement anymore. I didn't go online or look at social media or do anything. And I just became so depressed and overwhelmed with a future that felt like I was traveling in the darkness. So my parents were trying to help me, of course. They're trying to get me out. I still had tried to attend church as much as possible my health would allow, but even that was becoming hard. Until one day I met a boy, and he gave me a book that was written about an experience his grandfather went through. He was 2004's only survivor of a horrible plane crash. And the book talked about trials and adversity, and I realized that Everything that I had experienced was not what I planned. But in becoming and allowing myself to become bitter and jealous of the world and everyone around me, I was robbing myself of the experiences that I was meant to be learning and that I could be having that were just as great. And so when I finished the book, I wrote down goals and I took baby steps. I first started by going to the grocery store more, and then I found ways to find hobbies, and I started to talk to people and learned that there were actually a lot more people like me out there. And when I got rid of depression, my health started to improve. And it got to the point that now, 13 years later, when I'm supposed to be dead, I actually have gained some of the greatest experiences of my life. And I'm loved by some of the most great people out there. I have friends that care, and I learned that what happens to us we may not be able to control. And there are days where I still feel like I'm trapped in a hell and I'm in lots of pain. But I'm still smiling, and I'm reminded of two things all the time. And the first one is a favorite poem of mine from Robert Frost. That's two roads diverge in a wood, and I chose the path less walking by, and that has made all the difference. And then the last one is from my Heavenly Father, who said, I never said it would be easy. I only said it would be worth it. And I can be a walking testimony for him, showing that he's right. It isn't easy, but even if we can't see what's ahead of us, what's supposed to happen will happen, and it's always worth it in the end. And that's my story.
Well, I hope that you've enjoyed Kaija's interview as much as I did, and the wisdom that she had to share. You know, one thing in particular that stuck out to me, she talked about the importance of taking it just one step at a time. I think sometimes when we get into this situation where, things are not going well for us, we want it better, and we want it better right now. And in most cases, that doesn't happen. In most cases, especially when you're dealing with a really hard time, the best thing to do and the best way to approach it is by doing exactly what Kaija said and taking it just one small step at a time, doing one little thing and then moving on to the next thing and the next thing. Sometimes attempting to swallow it all and make everything instantly better, all it does is overwhelms us and doesn't get us anywhere. But taking it one step at a time, I think, was extremely valuable wisdom that I gained from listening to Kaija. All right, if you've enjoyed this, again, as I said before, be sure to share it with anyone else out there who you feel might benefit from Kaija's wisdom, from her story. Also, remember to subscribe to the channel so that you can be sure to get notifications on future episodes, future stories, future wisdom that we release. And last of all, remember that wisdom is everywhere in the people around us. If we'll just simply have the courage to connect with others around us and be willing to open our heart and open our mind to receiving their wisdom.